My name is Joleene Moody, and the name isn't by choice. I clearly married into it. Let me just start my little clock here. And it's actually a nice little warming up piece. Do you know what I mean? Like when I'm on the phone with customer service representatives and I have to give them my name and I say it's Joleene Moody, I cannot be bitchy when I say it because they will use that against me. Clearly. You guys were playing a game when we came in. 2 truths and a lie? Can I play real quick? Sure. Okay, cool. So 2 truths and a lie. I wrote a full-length play that's being produced right now. I am related to that woman right there. She's my first cousin. And my husband is an OBGYN.
You're not related to her.
I'm not related to her, what? Oh, everybody's like, all of them! The truth is, I did write a full-length play, and it is being produced right now in Syracuse, New York. That is my cousin standing back there. And hey! And my husband's not a doctor, he's a criminal prosecutor. So, and it's interesting how I met him. I'm just going to dive into this because, you know, I want you to know, I'm going to talk about me for 1 minute because this isn't about me today, it's about you. But I want you to understand that I'm not just a talking head that's in here. There's a reason I'm here, and it's because I can resonate with all of you shifting in your lives, making this change that you're making as an adult. I did it. I think we all go through different acts, right? It's not just one. It's not just one story that we have. So I want you to know that I honor you. I absolutely honor you because I made a huge shift in my life and it scared the bejesus out of me, but I did it. And I know that when we make changes in our lives and we make these decisions to do different things, it's scary, isn't it? You know, there's scary parts to it. We have a lot of questions. Is this going to work? Am I moving in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing? What is this going to look like? All of these questions come up. So what I do now is I used to be a television reporter. I spent about 10 years in the business. And I was a fill-in anchor and a TV reporter for YNN. It's Time Warner Cable News now. They've changed it so many times. It was News 10 now when I was there. But I was at other stations prior to that. The thing was is I didn't love what I was doing. There were things about it I really enjoyed, but I didn't feel it fully. And if you can resonate with me, I can see it in your face. It's when you're in a space or working a job or doing something that just doesn't resonate with you fully. But what we do is we tend to step into life merely existing. So we kind of follow the cultural norm. We do what culture expects us to do. You know, we go out, we find the job, we get married, we go to college, whatever it is that it looks like, and then we step into that job. And then we wonder why we're unhappy. And then what we have is like maybe we had these screaming desires and passions within us. But have you ever told somebody about something you wanted to do and they've reacted like you're an idiot? Or it was ridiculous, have you? I mean, be honest with me, I want to know. I guarantee there's a lot of head nodders in here because that's exactly what's going on. I have this whole agenda, I'm not going to follow it. I hate when that happens. And I'll give you an example of what I mean is, I am a multi-passionate entrepreneur. And basically what I do is I call myself a passion shift coach. And I'm a speaker. And when I chose to leave news, I consciously was aware that I wanted to be a voice for other people. I didn't know what that looked like. And I spent about 2.5 years as a business coach. So basically what I did is I worked with women entrepreneurs that were coaches and consultants, and I taught them how to find or create speaking engagements to generate a 5-figure income. And my income skyrocketed as a result. And I'm like, this is great. I'm making money for the first time in my life. But not all pistons were firing. Because what happened is I went so fast in one direction, I completely missed what was going on inside of me. So the way I describe this, I'm actually writing a second book called Take Your Voice Back. It's like we're born, I don't care what anybody says, I know this to be true. And if you struggle with it, come talk to me. We're born with a calling, with desires. It's in us. And you ever read those books or you hear conversations, you hear some idiot like me stand up and talk and go, it's in you and you know what it is. And you're thinking, no, I don't. When it gets that lost, that frequency, it's like a frequency within you, that calling has been buried by the limiting beliefs and the negative programming of our own Western culture. So those negative voices, they could be people that love you, that just adore you. And then when you step up with this dream or this desire, they're right there to smash it, and we believe them. You know, when I went to school for news, I was just talking to Troy about this, and when I left college, I didn't do the internship like you were supposed to do. I didn't do all those steps. I kind of got sidetracked and did different things. And then when I realized I wanted to step back in my role as a TV reporter, I had nothing behind me. I didn't have that internship. I had radio credit from college. And let's face it, the radio stations at most colleges, not many people really enjoy them, let alone listen to them. I remember one night I tried to give away 20 CDs if somebody called in and the phone never rang. So nobody was listening to me, you know? But I had a real deep hunger and desire to tackle this thing head on. I wanted to be a reporter. It's what I went to school with. 10 years had elapsed, however, from the time I graduated to 8 years, to the time I decided to tackle this dream. And I was with my daughter's father at the time. We're not together now. I'm happily married. And he was driving me to this news station in Watertown. Who here is in Watertown? I heard someone say JCC. No? So Watertown, New York, are you familiar with that little tiny, yeah, shut up, Joleene, get on with the story, would you? So he was driving me there because I had earned an opportunity thanks to a guy I was playing softball with. He happened to work at this television station, and I started talking to him. I went to school for this. How do I get in? What do I need to do? And he said, I'll help you. And he helped me put together kind of this hodgepodge resume. There was nothing on it because I hadn't done anything. But I showed up. And when I walked into the newsroom, the news director said, I'm going to sit you at the anchor desk, and I just want you to read the teleprompter. Has anyone here ever seen or read a teleprompter? Right in the back. So you know if you're reading a teleprompter and you have a director, you've got the text that you're supposed to read, and then in carrots are the director's prompts that will say roll vo, which means roll video, or sat, which means put up the soundbite. And it had been so long, I had no idea what these things meant. So I'm sitting there and I'm at the anchor desk and I'm shaking. I think I was 27 years old. So I've graduated, it's been 7 or 8 years. And I was sitting at the anchor desk and I was reading, and there's a pedal you have to push. So I wish I still had the video, because this is all you see. It's just this body jerking forward. And I'm reading, today people who have energy with Niagara Mohawk roll vo will be going through some changes. And finally, after I read the prompts like 3 times, the news director in my ear, you have an IFB, Joleene, you don't need to read those parts. You could just block those out. So I thought, well, I'm not getting this job. He gave me the job. What he said to me when I came off the desk is, you're a natural. And I knew that in my bones. Something just lit up when I was in front of people. You know, when I had a camera on me. I mean, if you ever saw me in the field doing a live shot, I could blow Katie Couric away. You don't believe me, do you? But I loved it that much. So I got the job. And I did. I worked in news for about 10 years, but there was always something inside of me that just didn't feel right. So I started paying attention to people, like really looking at their faces. And I would walk in places like Home Depot, and you know, the person would be at the checkout counter checking me out, and I would be like, Peter, do you like what you do? I would just ask people. And I would get 1 of 3 answers. Yeah. Or, yeah, I think so, I guess. Or, no. Well, it's clear if they're saying no that they really don't like what they're doing. And it's clear if they're saying yes, they do. And there are people out there, I'm not one of them, that just are happy with that simple life, and they are fulfilling exactly what they want with what they're doing. So my voice today is not for those people. My voice today is for those that have so much within them that they want to explore. And I'm here to give you permission to explore it, because believe it or not, it's almost like we want to go and there's things we want to do, but we need that permission in a way, someone to say it is so okay to explore these things. And you're all in such a perfect place because you've already made a decision to explore something different in your life. And that can look like anything, absolutely anything. The people in the middle that go, yeah, I guess. Which direction do you think they're heading in, yes or no? They're headed towards no. So there's a large percentage of people out there I began to recognize that were walking around merely existing. They weren't living. They were just existing. They were just showing up. They would show up at their desk job or whatever it was. They would go through the motions. They would get in a car that probably didn't run well or they couldn't stand or couldn't afford to get a new one to drive to a house that was probably behind on 2 mortgages, and they're stuck. And this is where I began to notice that people are merely existing. Something's missing here. It doesn't have to be like that. And I got this idea. I thought, I think I'm going to quit my job, which I hate, and I'm going to explore this public speaking thing. I'd never run a business. I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant. That's a true story. It never crossed my ear. Didn't know. And there were a lot of things that were happening in the newsroom that were really pushing me out the door to leave. And I finally made the bold decision, and I actually tell the story. I have a book right here, and I tell the story of how I made that shift and how I left, because I was comfortable. I was getting paid. I had a job that I could go to every day. Hell, I got free cable, which thrilled my husband. He's a hockey fan and a baseball fan, and cable gets pretty expensive. I had health care. Have you ever talked to someone and they say specifically, I can't leave my job because I'll lose my health insurance? Because we're trapped in that, right? For some reason, I just didn't want to listen to these things. I wanted to take risks, and I knew that in these risks there would be sacrifice. And I want you to remember, no matter what you choose to do, and I know you already know this, risk leads to reward. Risk is part of it. Nothing good ever comes from being sedentary. What was it my husband said the other night? We were having a really in-depth conversation, and he said, now it escapes me, but it was something along those lines. Anything you reach for that's meaningful isn't going to mean a damn thing unless you reach for it. And in my journey out of where I was to where I am now, I made financial, emotional, and spiritual sacrifices. There were a lot of people in my life that kind of fell away, that weren't serving me anymore. Voices that were holding me back, that were keeping that voice from within from unraveling. And I knew innately, I knew something was off. So I made that bold decision to quit my job. And when I did, I had a friend who I had worked with in the newsroom that had moved on, and she had a public relations job at a college. And if anybody's ever been in media, it's kind of a joke that when you leave the business, you go to a public relations position to die. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to follow that norm. I wanted something bigger and better. And so when I left the job, she said, well, what are you going to do? And all I knew is I wanted to be a speaker. I didn't even know what that looked like. And I told her, because I have another passion, I want to write. And she said to me, Joleene, there's no money in writing. A statement like that from someone you love will do one of two things. It will either crush you or it will catapult you. It's your choice. Every time those voices show up, you must choose to catapult yourself. Because every time someone tells you that there's something you can't have, that's their limitation. It is not yours. And they're showing up thinking, wow, you're going to do this thing? That's crazy. One of the things I'm doing right now, and it literally unfolded 3 days ago. I went to, has anyone ever been to Kripalu in Massachusetts? Ever heard of it? Know what it is? It's this big giant health and wellness center in the Berkshires, in the mountains. Yoga and wellness center. I didn't do a stitch of yoga while I was there. But I went there for a 5-day coaching intensive. So I'm a coach, and this particular coach, an author that was putting it on, was talking about following your calling. And I really wanted to embrace that piece more because I help move people through that and then teach them how to monetize on it. Because sometimes we do need guidance and we do need permission to actually step out and do these things. So we decided, there were 30 of us, that when we left that retreat, that we would stay in touch. And so we created, thank you social media, a Facebook group. And so we keep each other on top of the game, we encourage everybody. And one of the women posted for another woman this opportunity to be a TV producer on a sitcom in Los Angeles. And it was from this website, you might want to write this down, this will interest you, but dreamjobbing.com, Jobbing. Never heard of it in my life. And one of the women that was in this retreat with me, she went by the name Bubsy. It took me like 3 days to get that. I kept calling her Berkeley, and I couldn't remember Bubsy for the life of me. But she also loves comedy. She's entertained stand-up comedy. You know, when we were the comedians in the group. And someone posted this job, this opportunity to be a guest producer for 1 week on a show for Bubsy. And I was all over that. I posted, wow, this was right up my alley. Send. On Thursday, I had one coaching client and I cleared the rest of the day to write. And I took all of, well, I honored my client, but I took off the table the writing and put on the table, I wanted to do this. And so I had to create a 1-minute video. So I'm in my office, I'm doing my hair and my makeup, I don't have lighting, like real lighting, so I'm pulling lamps in from my daughter's room. I'm setting everything up, I'm kind of writing this 1-minute script because you had 60 seconds to pitch to the sitcom why they needed to choose you. I intentionally did not look at other pitches, I just wanted to put what was coming from my heart. I put it together and by 5:30 that night, I had gone through, I'm only halfway through, just about everybody, so halfway through my Facebook list asking people to vote for me because I have to win with votes. And the pain in the butt is, in order for you to vote, you have to register, and that's kind of a chore, but once you register every day, you can vote, and it's just a click, 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 and all these people began showing up for me. And all these votes began pouring in. And I'm late to the game too. This contest started a few weeks ago, and there's people, I now have caught up with them because people out there are rooting for me. But there's people out there that don't believe this. So like I would send them this message, hey, I'm doing this thing, I would love your vote, and they would respond back with, really? Is this real? That's what happens. Yeah, it's real. There are so many things out there that are waiting for you that show up in front of you. And when someone steps out of the norm to do something differently, that shocks us. We don't know what to do with that. That's not what our culture says we're supposed to do. We're supposed to live in this box. I mean, believe me, it would have been really cool when I decided to be a speaker, and I didn't know that I was going to be a coach. I wasn't certified at that point. I was like looking at the Post Standard, wanted, speaker and writer, starting pay, $70,000. It didn't exist. If it's something I wanted, it was something I had to build and I had to create. And the voice that kept gnawing at me was, it's too late for this. You're too old for this. You can't begin this journey. What are you, nuts? Does anybody know who Frank McCourt is? Mm-hmm. Yes. What did he write? Angel's Ashes. What do you know about him? What can you tell us? That's okay, I'm not, how can you not know? He was a teacher in New York City for 30 years. And he taught literature, he taught teenagers. And his students would always tell him, Mr. McCourt, you gotta write, you're so good at this. And he would just push it aside and push it aside. Yet when he went home at night, I wrote an autobiography about him. He would sit down and he would try to write and it wouldn't come out. He wanted to, but it wouldn't come out. These are those frequencies I was talking about earlier. It was there, but buried by, when I say other frequencies, other people's limiting beliefs and all of the garbage that tells us we can't have what we want. Because let's face it, when you choose your own journey, it's an untraditional route, and our culture can't handle that. It wants it in a box, it wants it specific, and it has to be something that you can gain through instant gratification, where it's quick. So finally, one day, he literally said to his class towards the end of his career, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, I'm done. And he was close to retirement, so he retired. He was 66 when he wrote Angela's Ashes. It was a Pulitzer Prize-winning book. What's more is it was made into a movie and he became a millionaire. I'm not sure.
Because I've read the book several times, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the name of the movie.
I believe he wrote a book after that.
Yes, yeah, and he died in 2009. But the bottom line is he stepped up. It doesn't matter where you are in the journey, because frankly, where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. I couldn't have done this 10 years ago. I couldn't have started this journey. Wait, it's been 5 years. So 15 years ago, say, I couldn't have done it. I wouldn't have been ready for any of what I do. And there's a lot of different things I do. I just wasn't ready. So the space and the place you are now, it's exactly where you're supposed to be. Because you learn those lessons as you go. The ones that hurt, the ones that feel good, the ones that make you struggle, the ones that make you choke, the ones that make you laugh and smile. So while I was in this job as a TV reporter and it was nearing the end, and I just told you about my friend Andrea who said, you know, you can't write. There's no money in writing. Well, I just dove into it after that because I wanted to prove to the world that that wasn't true. And I got an awful lot of freelance writing jobs that supported me while I was growing this business that I didn't even know was budding. Not just to become a speaker, then I stepped into the role of a coach. I got certified. I started showing up in rooms so I could learn how to sell myself, so I could find the people that needed me. And what I found interesting was, as I kept going through my analysis of people, asking them questions, is we truly do live in a culture that wants to put jobs in boxes. So it's like, oh, what are you going to do? You know, and there's doctor, lawyer, and none of that is wrong. But what I mean is we just zero in on it. And we don't explore what we can do outside of that. Has anyone ever seen the Bee Movie? It's an animated film with Jerry Seinfeld. Okay, if you hadn't, it's a DreamWorks film, so you can digest it as an adult. It's funny. Rent it. The interesting thing about that movie is the Jerry Seinfeld's little bee character, his name is Barry. And Barry is, you know, he's very excited with his friend because they went through 3 long days of elementary school, and then 3 really long days of high school, and then 3 excruciating, packed, studied-filled days of college. And now they're ready to go into the hive and find their job. This world is our hive. And they're really excited about it, what's going to be available, you know, and they go to orientation. And during orientation, one of the lady bees says, now make sure tomorrow when you show up to choose your job, you choose carefully, because it's going to be the job you do for the rest of your life. And Barry was like, oh, he wouldn't have it. So the next day when they showed up to choose their job, you know, like on, what's the game show, Family Feud, it goes ding, you know, when they put the answers up, they have this huge board in the Bee Movie, and it's got all those things like that, and the jobs are just flipping through, and they have to hurry up and choose, because if they don't, the job's going to close. And Barry sees what he wants to do, and it will take him outside to explore. What he did is he broke the rules. And his buddy was like, no, we got to stick with the board, we got to choose our job. But Barry didn't want to. I want you to break the rules for the greater good. I don't want you knocking a bank over. But for the greater good. If there's something in you that's calling, you must answer it, because it's your truth. And here's what's happening. When you ignore that truth, or you try to cover it up with a story or reasoning or others people's voices, it never goes away. That truth always remains. And it can become an excruciating pain when you ignore it. Does anybody know what I mean? And sometimes we don't know, and I get that. We may have an inkling or an idea of what it is that we want to do. And so a lot of people will ask me, and this is a question that is asked of many, many people throughout the world that do my kind of work. Well, how do I know? How do I dig in? How do I find out? I don't know what it is. And then that's when I said in the beginning, don't you hate it when people say, yes, you do, it's within you. You just have to listen. The first time someone said that to me, I'm like, well, how do I listen? Go sit in a corner with a cup of tea and listen. So I made a cup of tea and I sat in a corner, and all I heard was a train. And I was searching so much because I was searching with my mind. I wasn't searching with my heart. And it's not one of those things that's just, for some people, they got it, they know. You know, I always knew that, you know, what I'm doing now is definitely a huge part of what I do, but writing was always something, and writing comedy, I love making people laugh. When the director picked up my script at the theater, and they called, I mean, I was like in tears. This is just a little theater in Syracuse. We're not on Broadway, people, not yet. But I was so overtaken by the very thought that someone saw value in what I had, I was just blown away by it. So the director said, do you want to be a part of the process? And I said, believe it or not, if you know me, I'm a control freak. I think we all have that to a degree. I said, no, I just want to see how this unfolds and what it's going to look like when it's done. But I would like to be a part of, there's the control freak, she stepped in a little. I'd like to be a part of the casting process, and I would like to be at the first read-through. So the first rehearsal of a show is just the script reading. I said, that's all I need. And I brought my camera goes with me everywhere. And she said, that's fine, you know. So I was part of the selection process of the characters, which were nothing like what I wrote. And the other directors in the theater said, get used to it. It's always like that. And the second thing I went to was the read-through, which was a few weeks ago. And I asked, my camera's just a tiny HD. It's like the size of a BlackBerry, so it's not intrusive at all. And so I was shooting video of everything, and they're reading my words, and I'm choked up because they're laughing. And they keep saying, Joleene, this is so good. And it's everything I've ever wanted. And because I kept going, I'm getting it. I'm hearing it. And now it's even more, what's the word, validation for me. I don't know where this is going to go. I'm not going to know, though, if I don't keep moving. Les Brown said, shoot for the moon. You may land among the stars, but you land, right? There's 3 points. I try to keep this simple. And I do have a tendency to go everywhere because I follow my heart. Whatever I feel or whatever I can see in your faces, I want to go with. When I was in Kripalu, so Kripalu, if anyone's interested, you should check out their website because they have a lot of classes there that can speak to you or help you move through any kind of struggles. And they don't have to be all woo-woo. You know, there's an edge of me that's a little woo-woo. I'm a very spiritual person. It took me a long time to get to that place. But God who? I got it now. You know, and everyone has their way of pulling in faith. Because there's one thing I do know. Faith is going to get you where you need to be. I'm not talking a religion or a Christianity. If that's yours, that's perfect. If it's not, that's still perfect, right? So it's what resonates with you. So it's your belief in you that will get you where you need to be. So I chose this particular retreat because I wanted to pull out of me more of what I knew was within. I knew there was more than just, there was just more. And it had to do with writing. And it had to do with laughter. And one of the exercises we had to do when we were there is we had to pair up with somebody. And we had to ask these specific questions. And asking these specific questions would help pull out even more and help that person discover what it is. Well, some people, like I said, they know. So I'm talking to this woman, and her name is Gail. And Gail is a registered nurse, and she is in charge of this entire floor at this particular hospital. And while she's filling needs, we have human needs within us. There's 6 of them, and they need to be met. That's another hour. But she was fulfilling needs on a certain level, but there were still pieces that were missing. So she showed up at this retreat, and I said to her the first question, which is actually very simple, what do you want? And she, like I said, some of us know what it is we want. She knew what she wanted, and she said, I want to go to Africa, and I want to lead a safari. I want to lead safaris for the rest of my life. And she started to cry. And it lit me up with so much excitement. I'd never met anybody that wanted to do something like that. To me, that seems so cool. And then the next question we had to ask is, well, what's the next step, you know, or tell me more about it. And she had gone on safaris before. So she had been over there, and she just had this extreme love for these animals. And she just was crying and crying and crying because for years she resisted fulfilling that passion because she didn't think she could. She thought she only had to exist in that box of her job. And so then the next question was, what's the next step for you? What else can you do? And she said, talk to my veterinarian. Because she goes on these excursions, I want to know if I can go with her. And that's how it begins. Many years ago, this was probably about 8 or 10 years ago when I was a reporter. I've been out of the business for 5 years, so yeah, it was about that long. I used to start to take assignments that were easy, that didn't require a lot of work. And the assignments I would try to take were called one-stop shopping. So it was where you walked into the building and you just covered the story there, you got all your video there and all of your interviews, you're back in the newsroom, you edit, and you say, bye, have a nice day. And that story ends up in the B block, which means when you're watching the news, all the top stories are in the A block, then you have a commercial, then you have the B block, which is the stuff nobody cares about. So here I was, an award-winning journalist going for B block stuff because I just didn't love what I was doing. So this particular event I was covering was like a teacher's conference. And it ended at like 11:30, so I walked in at 11:20, because in 10 minutes I could grab all my B-roll and then have all the interviews lined up. I walk in and there's a speaker up there. And she has this audience just entranced and laughing, and I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I knew that already. Now I was walking in and seeing somebody that was doing it. You never saw someone move so quick through the actual interviews that were going to air. Get the questions out of the way. Okay, enough with you. I go to the speaker. I'm like, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you, please? She's like, sure, of course. I mean, publicity. So I had to wait for her. She was at her table. She was selling books and things like that. I waited. I mic'd her up and everything. I put the camera on her, and every single question I asked was for me. How long have you been doing this? When did you start? How did you get your first speaking gig? How much money do you make? Well, I asked that gently, as gently as I could. I needed to know, how did you begin? And I kept the raw video of that interview for a year in my desk, along with her business card. And when I couldn't take it anymore, when my body and soul just were screaming, it's time to go, Joleene, I pulled out her business card and I went to her website. You know, instant gratification comes into play. I was hoping I could find all of the answers in her biography and her bio, how she got started to get, really dig into it more. Instead, I found a book, and I bought a book. I don't remember the name of it. But in the book, she talks about first steps that you can take when you want to begin on this new journey. And what she said is, if there's someone you know that is doing what you think you want to do, approach them. Ask them to talk to them. So I thought, well, hell, I'm going to do that to her. I'm going to ask her. She created what is known as impression of increase when I first saw her. What impression of increase is when you look at someone and you value who they are and what they do so much that you know by spending time with them, you will have the same increased value. Well, she affected me like that because when I walked in that room and saw her in Syracuse, New York, I thought, oh, they must have flown her in from LA. All speakers are in Los Angeles. When I found out she was in my backyard, I was like, it was that, again, that validation and that confirmation that you can have whatever you want from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. When I started writing sitcom spec scripts, the man I lived with, my daughter's father, told me it wasn't going to work. And I listened to him. And they ended up in a box. And the truth of the matter is, I can write comedy from where I am. I don't have to be in Hollywood. Actually, as the universe functions, the space that the industry is in right now, they're looking for writers outside of Hollywood, and they're looking for women. Oh my God. So I completely forgot what I was saying because I knew that would happen. But anyway, his voice trying to tell me that I couldn't, you see, made me put all of that stuff away. The universe shows up for you. Whether you choose to believe it or not, I promise you that it does. Because all of that writing ended up in these boxes, right? And as I was moving through life, I didn't have much space in my little apartment. This was when it was still just me, before I was married, before I had a child. And my mom had so much stuff in her basement that she was storing for me, including these 2 boxes. And then one day, I was sitting in the newsroom, and it was raining. I mean, it was coming down so hard. The newsroom, the phone just kept ringing. Basements were flooding. Businesses were compromised. There was a veterinarian that had to move all the animals out of the veterinarian's office because it just flooded. My mom was one of those calls. She called me. She's like, Joe, are you covering this story? Well, yeah. I had to get out there. I didn't want to. I had these great rain boots, though, that, I was waiting to break in, so it was good. And she said, if you want to come to my house, you can use that as she said, I got 10 inches of water in my basement. I said, Mom, what about my stuff? And she said, Joe, your stuff is ruined. So all of my writing over the years, plays I had submitted that had been rejected, poems, songs. When I got there, my stepfather had pulled the boxes out and set them up on a shelf, and they were just a clump. Everything was just a clump together, and my heart broke. Just thinking about it breaks my heart because all of that work was compromised. And she said, wait a minute, we can freeze dry this. And I'd never heard of that process before. But when there's basement damage, there's companies out there that will come in and do this. And those 2 boxes went there, and they came back, and even the words that were written in ink were saved. Some of them, like I thought about it when I was driving here, this always happens. I should have brought that with me. It would have been great to show you. Some of it did bleed, but not enough to destroy what I wrote. And the first thing I did was pull out that script. It's called Visiting Bammy Lewis, which was the full-length comedy that I wrote, and I rewrote it. The first time I wrote it was in '97. The rewrite was in 2012. It's on its legs right now, you guys. The rain didn't stop it. My disbelief in myself didn't stop it. The universe kept going, hey, dumbass, would you do something with this? It's funny because if you open the boxes, this is what I mean by reaching back to different things that you've experienced. They show up that it means something to you. When I was opening these boxes, I did it very recently again, there are folders like this, and it says on the top of the folder, as if I was in 8th grade, I wrote playwriting on it. Just so I knew that was in there. And I'm pulling out all these scripts of things that I started and didn't finish. I even tried to write a musical. All of these things were there. And that's when it hit me right in the heart. Why did you stop, Joleene? Keep going. And now you can't, I'm like a train. You can't, like I was so excited standing out there, I couldn't wait to come in here to talk to you. Because I want each and every one of you to know whatever that is within is yours to own, and you can own it. And if you can't hear what it is, you can sit in a corner and have a cup of tea. But there are people out there that they're bringing that voice to you. I'm happy to talk to any of you afterwards about it, how to hear it, how to explore it. You got to start paying attention to weird things you do. And maybe they're not so weird. But to this day, when I go into a bookstore, my husband, my daughter, and I, we have a ritual. We go into Barnes & Noble. We'll do this after dinner sometimes for a few hours. And everyone goes to their area. Maddie goes to, she's in the teen section now, she's 11. She reads those like volumes and it started with Harry Potter, you know, all of these trilogies of like demons, and she's a good kid though, she doesn't hurt anybody. She even, you know, Anne, we were talking earlier, she started to write a book last night, and she was reading this to us, and my jaw honestly was like, everything made sense. It just really flowed so beautifully. And she said to me, another confirmation, Mom, I need to read this to you because you're an author. It's like, oh my God, you just called me an author. Yeah, I know that's over there, but you just called me an author. And then writing the play. People were calling me a playwright. I'm like, wow, that sounds weird, but I like it. I'm going to keep going with this. So think of things that you do, and you can write these down. Ask people in your family, what was I like when I grew up? Because when we go in these bookstores, I'm drawn for whatever reason to the wall of journals. It's like, and rarely do I buy one. I always seem to get them as gifts. But I like to, it's going to sound bizarre, I like to open them. I like to, what do the pages look like, the outside? What does it smell like? I'm drawn to it. That meant something. Because you have to pick those things up and write in them. That's what they're for. That's what I love to do. So sometimes there'll be things that don't even make sense to you, but one of these days they're all going to connect. So if it's okay with you now, I'd like to challenge all of you a little bit and ask you questions that you must be willing to answer. And you can write it down. If you don't want to write it down because it's very personal, I honor that completely. But write the question down. And then take it home with you. Because what it's going to do is it's going to start unraveling those things within you, and that frequency is going to come alive again, step by step by step. And the first question that I want you to ask yourself is, what do you want? Now I realize that's kind of a general broad question, but wait, there's more. What do you want? So if I were to ask myself that question, what do you want? I can safely say now, and it took me 42 years to get there. Can you believe I'm 42?
No, never.
You're my friend. What I want is I want to make people laugh. That's what I want. I want to write. I've always written. Like when I was 17, I found in this book of the stuff that was mashed and freeze-dried. I submitted to I think it was Glamour magazine. They kind of have these steamy articles. I wrote one called Michael's Nightmare. I was 17 years old, and I submitted a handwritten script. It was not accepted. And if you read it, you'd be shocked. No, it's really bad too. But do you see what I mean? So I've been writing for as long as I can remember. That's a huge, huge indicator to me. So when I write, it's like it just flows sometimes. These stories, all these different things just come out of me. That is what I want. I want to write. The next question I want you to ask yourself is, why do you want it? Write that question down. Why do you want it? And really think about this. And this can happen on many levels. There may be lots of things that you want. Please know that that's okay. It's just the beginning. There's actually a book out there called The Artist's Way. which I don't so much agree with it anymore because it says you just got to have one thing and focus on it. I get focus, but if there's multi-passions within you, own it. Things will show up that open the door when they're supposed to. And here's the interesting thing about that, is we don't see those doors opening because in the space that we're in the space of disbelief. We might be depressed about where we are, and indicators and doors are opening in front of us that we don't even see because we're so locked up in that space. If I were still in that space of negativity and not believing in myself, and that person posted that TV producer thing, I never would have paid attention to it. I never would have acted on it. So what do you want? Why do you want it? Why do I want to write? I love making people laugh. I love it. When they did the read-through, and those actors were reading and laughing and telling me how great it was, there was no drink or drug that could have topped the high I was experiencing in that moment. And I thought, I want more of this, and I'm going to go get it. The third question I want you to ask yourself, why do you think you don't have it already? This is a huge question. Why do you think you don't have it already? Really think about this in the corner with your teacup, because a lot of things are going to come up. And what may come up is, my daughter's father told me I couldn't. I was going to say my baby daddy, but I didn't know if that was, if that would fly in here or not.
Yeah, use that one.
Why do you think you don't have it already? Whose voice crippled your own? Was that the only reason? Was it your own disbelief that you couldn't have it? So back in the day, I used to be a bartender at Applebee's on Erie Boulevard in Syracuse. And I used to sing in a band. I know that shocks all of you. Where did the nerve come from? You know, that passion to still sing is most definitely in there, and it will unravel. I'm not done. If someone were to come up to me right now and say, Joleene, you're 42, come on. Because that's what happened to me. I was probably in my 30s, my early 30s, and I had been working at the bar for about 3 years. I was singing in the band, still writing. I didn't know where the stuff would go. And one of my regulars came in. I had a lot of regulars, and his name was Greg. And he was the manager of a furniture store down the road. And it was Sunday, so he was the only one at the bar. He ordered his beer, he ordered a steak, and I was behind the bar. And I was washing, you know, the dishes in the sink. And at that time, in a sports bar, there was one TV, just one, and it was right there. So here's the sink, here's Greg, there's the TV. I mean, now you go in, even Applebee's, they're everywhere. So I had VH1 on, and Sheryl Crow was up there. All I want to do, and she's just jamming along, singing, and I'm like washing to it, and you know, I'm in this really good mood. And I say, Greg, you see that? You see that up there? That's going to be me someday. And he goes, Joleene, you got to be more realistic. Now at that time, I didn't have very good control over my temper. My filter was non-existent. And the F word happened an awful lot. And I went, F you, Greg. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, Joleene, come on. And he got really passionate all of a sudden. That is a 1 in a million chance. You're never going to get that. You have to be more realistic. Come down to earth. And I told you earlier, that's going to do one of two things. It's going to close you, or it's going to open you. And I roared. It took him about 3 weeks to come back into the bar. To which he apologized, and I don't know if he understood. I know now, clearly, that was a lesson for both of us. And his voice, it wasn't saying I couldn't have it. He was saying, that's my limitation, Joleene. Because if you can't have it, neither can you. It's their limitation, those voices that are trying to stop you. You know, I have a lot of different talents, and I'm gonna own that, because I didn't for a long time. I didn't want to sound conceited. I may not be the best singer. I may not be the best writer, but I do what works for me. And this book shifts people. I get emails all the time. I take screenshots of Facebook posts that people send me, and I save it. So those days that I don't believe in myself, I can read those and remember I did affect somebody. One of the things I do in my work is I do these 2-minute video montages called rapid fire coaching. And they're funny. My dog is involved. I have a little dachshund. But there's always a powerful little piece, a powerful message in it. And I have a lot of people come to me, will you teach me how to use video? Will you teach me how to shoot? Troy can tell you. There are 1,000 different editing systems and 100 different cameras, and you'd have to know what I'm using, or I'd have to know what you're using to make everything compatible, and it's not my passion to teach you. And having said that, if these videos are something that interest you, I'd love for you to be a part of my mailing list. If it's okay, I'm going to pass something around, just put your information. Also, I'll start with you and let you pass it around. If you're ever interested in retreats or workshops that I put on, that information is in there too. You won't get bombarded with crap, I promise you that, because I don't subscribe to that stuff myself, but just a thought for you. So, here I am in this bar, and he says all of these things, and it really fires me up. And I remember thinking 10 years had elapsed, and I wasn't singing in the band anymore, but I was on local TV. And I'd be getting ready for a live shot, and I'd be thinking, F you, Greg. Because this is one step in the right direction. And before I left news, there was one opportunity that I wanted that I hadn't tasted. And do you ever watch, has anyone ever heard of Snapped? It's on the Oxygen Network. So they have a lot of these news magazines, and you always see the reporter in the city that covered the story. And I'm like, boy, that would be so cool if that could be me one day. And one of the cases that I covered extensively was the Stacey Castor case. She murdered her husband with antifreeze, and they discovered she killed her first husband as well with the same thing, tried to kill her daughter, pinned the murders on her daughter. Oh my God, yeah, it's crazy. I got to cover that case. This is how I met my husband, by the way. He's a criminal prosecutor. And, NBC was there, the big NBC station was there. It was a whole big thing. Every day it was that was the one part of my job I loved, was the adrenaline of the cameras and the people and the equipment and all of that going on. And, covering this case was so big to me. And one day, I get a call from Snapped, from the producer of Snapped, and my knees were shaking. And he says, my name is, I don't even remember his name. That's how important this story is, okay? I don't remember the producer's name. But he called me and he said, we're putting a piece together. The district attorney has referred me to you, said you covered the case extensively. Would you be interested? First of all, I just wanted to maul the district attorney just for choosing me over the newspaper reporters, which they go into more detail. TV reporters, we have to keep our time crunched. And then I had to get this past my news director. I had to get approval. And he told me no. He said, if you do this, they'll sensationalize it. Well, I came armed. I talked to a seasoned reporter because I knew my news director was going to tell me no. And together we brainstormed rebuttals. So other reporters had done similar things. Someone covered in Albany a big case and was on, I think, either CSN, 60 Minutes, something big. So that I used that as leverage. And I said to him, you have to trust me. You have to trust that what I say will be used accurately. And he said, okay. And I had my first national 15 minutes of fame, as they said. And for months after that, I'd be walking through my daughter's school and people would be like, oh my God, I just saw you on Snapped. And I was like, oh my God, people actually watch the show. I know I did, And it was after that I knew that my time there was done, because I had these goals that I wanted to reach. And believe it or not, that was one of them. It was to be on a national news magazine somehow. So really think of what your goals are and how they light you up. Don't ignore them. They don't go away. Does anyone know who Les Brown is? The term motivational speaker is rather antiquated, but he is one of the #1 motivators in the world today still. Next to Tony Robbins, who do not call him a motivational speaker, he hates it. I have my certification through his school. Les Brown is someone I started listening to when I was in 5th grade. And the first thing I ever listened to was Live Your Dreams, it was called, and it was on a cassette. And he's on the front. So I always knew, I knew this was the direction for me. I knew there was more to life than just that 9 to 5. So when I was writing my book, I had been watching a video of his on YouTube, and he was addressing an audience in Utah, and he said something that just really resonated with me. So I rewound and I wrote it down verbatim what he said. And I didn't know, based on what I was reading, I needed his permission to use it because they were his words. So I tried to get a hold of Les Brown. And I did get a hold of his camp, of his team. I never actually spoke with him. And I was given permission to put this little excerpt in my book. But I want to read it to you, because to this day it resonates with me. And if anything triggers you today, I want it to be this. So it's on page 15. And it's nothing actually, it's something that he didn't actually say. It was something that somebody said to him. And here he was addressing this audience of like 3,000 people. And it was so powerful. And he said, the ideal situation for a man or woman to die is to have family members praying with them as they cross over. I was with my mom. Actually, she'd already passed, but we were all around her. So we have that ideal situation that we want the ones we love with us, right? But imagine, if you will, being on your deathbed and standing around your bed are the ghosts and the ideas, the dreams, the abilities, and the talents given to you by life. And you, for whatever reason, never acted on them. We never saw your leadership. You never used that voice or wrote that book. And there they all are, standing around your bed, looking at you with large, angry eyes, saying, we came to you. Only you could have given us life. But now we must die with you. The question is, if you die today, this is the question. If you die today, what ideas, what dreams, what abilities, what talents, what gifts will die with you? Write that down. What will die with you? And are you willing to let it go? Are you willing to suffer more and more internally every day because you didn't act on it? The very person who edited that book, very good at English, although she missed a few yours. I suck at that. Missed a few periods. I think any book we read, we find those errors. And very good friend of mine, and she wouldn't take any money, which I thought was great because, self-publishing a book can get pricey. And I was sitting with her at dinner. She said, just take me out to dinner. She chose the restaurant. And she said to me, Joleene, you should probably just stick with the public speaking. It doesn't, and I had to buy her damn dinner. Well, you know what? That was that voice again. That was that voice again that was telling me that that was her limitation. It wasn't mine. I mean, I picked up books that I thought sucked, but people are making money from them. People resonate with it. And I've had, like I said, an awful lot of people tell me how it shifted them, and that was the purpose of it. That's that high I was talking about. I had one woman, it's funny, because these things never go away. The book has been published since 2012. I'm actually going to republish it with a new cover, and I'm writing a second one. And I want the second one to be published by an actual publishing house. I want to get an agent. I want to, go all in. And it wasn't just her words that have ever crippled me. This woman calls me out of the blue. Like I said, the book's been published since 2012. No, she sent me a text message. That's what it was. Hey, Joleene, I don't know if you remember me. I heard you speak at XYZ. Did you know there's a typo on page 25 of your book? Can you fix that? Really? Because there's like thousands of copies that have been printed. You know what I mean? So there's people out there that they're not going to fit the mold or be the voice that you need to hear in that moment. And that is your challenge, is how you're going to handle it and still walk to the moon. When I started this gig as a speaker and a coach, my first website, it was one of those free websites because I couldn't afford it. It was a subdomain name. And if you're not familiar with what I mean, it was webs.joleene.com. That way it was free. There wasn't a search engine in the universe that could find this thing. But I had a website. And I had the title Speaker Scribe because I was still writing, along with the speaking. I was so excited to show somebody. I showed my brother. Oh my God, wait till you see my website. And he looked at me, he goes, Joe, you can't do this. He said that to me. You can't do this. I said, I can't do what? He goes, you can't just be a speaker. Why not? Do I have to go to speaker school? Do they even have speaker school? Because with everything that you want to do, don't get me wrong, you're being educated, I'm educated too, but there's always going to be a piece of you that wants something that they can't address in this classroom, and you don't need to because it's right here. And you create your own gig. When I first published this book, I remember being in a library, And of course, if you read the book, it's basically saying it's never too late to reinvent yourself. If you want it, it's yours. Well, I got this guy, and he's looking at the book, he goes, And he's with his wife, who, by the way, I don't know if she doesn't talk or she doesn't have a voice box, appeared very submissive to him. Right next to him, and he's like, well, this is very nice. And again, but it's not realistic. And that fire was burning. And at the time, I didn't have the words to tell him to F off, other than say F off. And I said, well, tell me what you mean. And he said, well, you know, the reality is we all have to get jobs and get out there to make money. I said, exactly. He goes, well, living your dreams isn't the way to do it. And I'm like, well, then this book isn't for you. And I was shaking because I was so angry. I was so triggered by it. And he was going on and on about, he's like, he does IT and all this stuff, and that's great. And he was actually moving his wife to New York to take this job, and that's great. But if the man truly loved what he was doing, we wouldn't be having the conversation we were having. And this woman next to him wouldn't be married to him if she were happy. Because you know as well as I do, you can tell by looking at someone's face what's going on, whether they're happy or not. So let me just say in closing this one thing, there isn't a damn thing out there that you can't not do. There just isn't. The only thing that stops you is you. You have the choice to believe those voices or to really know, and you know, you have that inner knowing where you know it's something you want to do, that it's something you want to go after. And when you go after, understand that it's a journey. If you're anything like me, I mean, I should have been a producer like by now. But it's not my timeline. I couldn't have handled it 10, 15 years ago. I needed to experience all of the things that I experienced so it could make me and shape me to who I am now. So with everything I have, try to be patient and embrace everything that's showing up in front of you. Start to really pay attention to what's showing up in front of you. And I encourage you with every step to explore your world, to love your life, and to live with purpose. And that's all I got. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.